What would you do if you were digging in your field and suddenly discovered a buried treasure chest filled with gold? Samuel Carter was a poor farmer struggling to support his family. Year after year, droughts, storms, and failed harvests pushed him closer to losing everything. Then one ordinary morning, his shovel struck something hidden beneath the soil, a mysterious chest. Inside were gold coins, precious jewels, and an ancient map carrying a chilling message. The greatest treasure has not yet been discovered. Most people would have stopped there, but Samuel couldn't ignore the mystery. Following the map into the dangerous Whispering Hills, he uncovered hidden clues, secret passages, and a forgotten legend that had remained buried for generations. What he eventually found shocked everyone, because the greatest treasure wasn't gold. It was something far more valuable. Something powerful enough to transform an entire valley and change thousands of lives forever. Stay until the end of this inspiring and emotional story, filled with mystery, adventure, life lessons, and a powerful ending you will never forget. Because sometimes the richest treasure isn't what you keep, it's what you choose to share. Chapter 1: The Poor Farmer's Struggle. The farmer who found a treasure. The small village of Oak Ridge Valley sat between rolling green hills and dense forests that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. The village had no tall buildings, no busy highways, and no grand shopping centres. Instead, there were small cottages, winding dirt roads, and endless fields that changed colour with the seasons. In spring, the valley became a sea of green. In summer, golden wheat danced beneath the sunlight. In autumn, the hills glowed with shades of orange and red, and in winter, snow covered the countryside like a white blanket. To visitors, Oak Ridge Valley looked peaceful, almost perfect. But for many of the farmers who lived there, life was far from easy. One of those farmers was a man named Samuel Carter. At 38 years old, Samuel had spent nearly his entire life working the same land his father and grandfather had farmed before him. He wasn't rich. In fact, he struggled to make ends meet. But he was known throughout the village for something more valuable than wealth: his honesty, his kindness, and his determination. Every morning, long before sunrise, Samuel woke up and began his day. While most of the village still slept, he was already outside preparing for work. The farm demanded constant attention. Animals needed feeding, fences needed repairs, fields needed planting. There was always something to do, always another task waiting. And Samuel rarely complained, because farming wasn't simply his job, it was his life. A simple life. Samuel lived in an old farmhouse on the edge of Oak Ridge Valley. The house had belonged to his family for generations. Time had not been kind to it. The roof leaked during heavy rain. Several windows needed replacing. The porch creaked whenever someone walked across it. The paint had faded years ago. Still, Samuel loved the house. Every room held memories of family dinners, holiday celebrations, stories shared beside the fireplace. His wife, Elena, often joked that the house was held together by hope and determination. Perhaps she wasn't entirely wrong. Elena was the heart of the family. Where Samuel was quiet and thoughtful, Elena was warm and optimistic. She had a way of finding hope even during difficult times. Together, they were raising their 12-year-old daughter, Clara. Clara inherited her mother's bright smile and her father's hard-working nature. She spent her afternoons helping around the farm whenever she could. Despite their financial struggles, the family remained close. They laughed together, worked together, supported one another. And that made life's challenges easier to bear. At least most of the time. Trouble in the fields. The previous 3 years had been particularly difficult. First came the drought. For months, very little rain fell across the valley. Crops withered beneath the relentless sun. Fields that should have been green turned brown. Farmers watched helplessly as entire harvests failed. Samuel lost nearly half his crop that year. The following year brought different problems. Heavy storms swept through the region. Strong winds flattened fields. Flooding destroyed newly planted seeds. Several barns throughout the valley suffered damage. Again, farmers struggled. Again, Samuel barely earned enough to survive. Then came the third year. Many villagers hoped conditions would improve. Instead, insect infestations spread through the area. Entire sections of farmland were ruined. The harvest was once again disappointing. 3 difficult years. 3 disappointing seasons. 3 years of uncertainty, and yet Samuel continued working. Because what choice did he have? Giving up was not an option. The weight of responsibility. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Samuel sat alone outside the farmhouse. The sun was setting beyond the hills. Orange light stretched across the fields. Normally, he enjoyed moments like this. Tonight felt different. His thoughts were heavy. Bills needed paying, equipment needed replacing. The roof needed repairs before winter arrived, and Clara would soon begin secondary school. Education cost money they barely had. Samuel stared across the fields. For years he had worked harder than ever, yet somehow life seemed to grow more difficult. The frustration weighed on him, not because he wanted wealth, not because he dreamed of luxury. He simply wanted security for his family, a chance to stop worrying, a chance to sleep peacefully, a chance to know that tomorrow would be easier than today. Elena stepped outside carrying 2 cups of tea. Without saying anything, she sat beside him. For several moments they watched the sunset together. Then she spoke softly. "You're worried again." Samuel sighed. "Can you blame me?" "No." He looked toward the fields. "I keep thinking things will improve." "They will. You always say that." "Because it's true." Samuel smiled slightly. One of the things he loved most about Elena was her optimism. Even during difficult times, she believed better days were coming. Sometimes he wished he shared that confidence. The village market. Every Saturday, farmers gathered at the village market. It was one of Oak Ridge Valley's oldest traditions. People sold vegetables, fruit, eggs, baked goods, and handmade crafts. The market served as both a business opportunity and a social gathering. That Saturday morning, Samuel loaded several baskets of produce onto his wagon. The harvest wasn't impressive, but it was all he had. As he arrived at the market, familiar faces greeted him. Some villagers smiled, others discussed weather forecasts and crop prices. The atmosphere felt friendly despite everyone's struggles. Samuel set up his small stall beside a farmer named Harold Benson. Harold was several years older and known for speaking his mind. After examining Samuel's produce, Harold shook his head. "Tough season." Samuel nodded. "Tougher than most." Harold sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if farming is worth it anymore." Samuel understood the feeling. Many farmers felt the same way. The work was hard, the rewards uncertain, and yet they continued. Because farming wasn't merely a profession, it was a way of life. A stranger arrives. Later that afternoon, something unusual happened. A stranger arrived in Oak Ridge Valley. Visitors were rare, particularly strangers traveling alone. The man appeared to be in his 60s. His clothes were worn but clean. His grey beard suggested years of travel. He carried a leather bag and walked with the confidence of someone who had seen much of the world. Several villagers watched curiously as he moved through the market. Eventually, he stopped at Samuel's stall. Without speaking, the stranger examined the vegetables. Then he smiled. "You grew these yourself?" "Yes." The man nodded approvingly. "Good quality." "Thank you." The stranger purchased several items. Then, to Samuel's surprise, he asked an unusual question. "How long have you farmed this land?" Samuel frowned slightly. "Most of my life." The stranger looked thoughtful. "Interesting." Before Samuel could ask why, the man paid and walked away. The encounter lasted less than 5 minutes, yet somehow it stayed in Samuel's mind. There was something unusual about the stranger, something difficult to explain. Hard choices. As summer progressed, financial pressures continued growing. One evening, Samuel reviewed his accounts at the kitchen table. The numbers were discouraging. Income remained low. Expenses continued increasing. Eventually, he arrived at a painful conclusion. Some equipment would need replacing. The old tractor had become unreliable. Repairs cost more each year. Without better equipment, future harvests could become even more difficult. But purchasing new machinery was impossible. There simply wasn't enough money. The realization frustrated him, not because he expected life to be easy, because no matter how hard he worked, progress felt impossible. Elena noticed the concern on his face. "What is it?" Samuel hesitated, then showed her the numbers. She studied them quietly. The silence lasted longer than he liked. Finally, she looked up. "We'll find a way." Samuel laughed softly. "You always believe that. Someone has to." Clara's dream. A few days later, Samuel found Clara sitting beneath a large oak tree reading a book. She loved reading, particularly stories about explorers and adventurers, people who traveled the world discovering hidden places and forgotten treasures. Samuel sat beside her. "What are you reading?" Clara smiled. "A story about a sailor who discovered a lost island." "Another adventure?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Imagine finding something nobody else has ever found." Samuel laughed. "Sounds exciting." "It is." Then Clara grew serious. "Do you ever wish something exciting would happen here?" Samuel looked across the farm, the fields, the barns, the animals, the familiar landscape. Sometimes life felt predictable, almost too predictable. But excitement wasn't something he expected or even wanted. At least that's what he believed. Little did he know that his daughter had unknowingly asked the perfect question. Because something extraordinary was already approaching. Something hidden beneath the very soil he worked every day. Something that had remained undiscovered for generations. The storm. Late one evening, dark clouds gathered above Oak Ridge Valley. Thunder echoed across the hills. Strong winds swept through the fields. Villagers hurried indoors. Rain began falling heavily. Within minutes, the storm intensified. Lightning flashed repeatedly across the sky. Samuel rushed outside to secure equipment and animals. The weather reminded him how fragile life could be. Farmers depended on nature, yet nature followed its own rules. By midnight, the storm finally began weakening. Exhausted, Samuel returned inside. He stood by the window watching rain fall across the fields. Something caught his attention. Near the far edge of his property, where several old trees stood, part of the ground appeared disturbed. Perhaps erosion, perhaps fallen branches. The darkness made it difficult to see. He decided to investigate in the morning. Then he went to bed, unaware that the storm had done more than damage the land. It had revealed something hidden, something buried deep beneath the soil, something that would soon change his life forever. A new day. The following morning arrived bright and clear. Sunlight washed across the valley. Birds sang from nearby trees. The storm seemed like a distant memory. After breakfast, Samuel grabbed his tools and headed toward the section of land damaged by the weather. He expected a routine day of repairs. Nothing more, nothing unusual. As he approached the area, he noticed the ground had indeed shifted. Several roots had become exposed. Part of the soil appeared washed away. Curious, he began clearing debris. Branches, rocks, loose dirt. Then something unexpected happened. His shovel struck a hard object beneath the earth. Clang! The sound echoed through the quiet morning. Samuel froze. That definitely wasn't a rock. Slowly, he knelt beside the spot and began digging. The object grew larger with every scoop of soil. Wood, iron, a rectangular shape. His heartbeat quickened. Whatever it was, it didn't belong there. And it had been hidden for a very long time. Samuel had no way of knowing it yet. But beneath the earth rested a discovery that would transform his future, test his character, and lead him on the greatest adventure of his life. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, The Mysterious Discovery. Samuel uncovers an ancient chest buried beneath his farm, and what he finds inside begins a mystery that has remained unsolved for generations. Chapter 2, The Mysterious Discovery, The Farmer Who Found a Treasure. Samuel Carter knelt in the damp soil, staring at the object he had uncovered. The morning sun shone through the trees, illuminating the freshly dug earth around him. For several seconds he simply stared. His heart beat faster, his hands trembled slightly. The object beneath the ground was definitely not a rock, nor was it a tree root. It looked like a chest, an old chest, a very old chest. Samuel brushed away more dirt. Gradually the shape became clearer. The chest appeared to be made of thick oak wood reinforced with rusted iron bands. Time had left its mark on every surface. The wood was darkened with age. The iron showed signs of corrosion. Yet despite decades, perhaps centuries beneath the earth, the chest remained remarkably intact. "What in the world?" Samuel whispered. The farm had belonged to his family for generations. His father had worked this land. His grandfather had worked this land. And as far as he knew, no one had ever mentioned a buried chest. Curiosity quickly replaced surprise. Carefully, Samuel continued digging. Within 20 minutes, the entire chest was exposed. It was larger than he originally expected. Heavy too, far too heavy for one person to carry easily. He attempted to lift it. Nothing. The chest barely moved. Whatever was inside added considerable weight. And that realization made his pulse quicken even more. Calling for help, realizing he couldn't move it alone, Samuel hurried back to the farmhouse. Elena was hanging laundry outside when she saw him approaching. He looked unusually excited, almost like a child who had discovered something extraordinary. "Samuel, you need to come with me." She laughed. "Why? I found something." "What kind of something?" "You'll see." Curious, Elena followed. Clara, noticing the excitement, joined them as well. Soon all three stood beside the chest. For several moments nobody spoke, then Clara's eyes widened. "Is that a treasure chest?" Samuel laughed. "It certainly looks like one." Elena touched the weathered wood. "How old do you think it is?" "No idea," Clara grinned. "Open it." Samuel smiled. If only it were that simple. The chest remained locked, and whatever mechanism once secured it had survived the years surprisingly well. Bringing the chest home. Using ropes, a small wagon, and a considerable amount of effort, the family managed to transport the chest back to the farmhouse. The process took nearly 2 hours. By the time they finished, everyone was exhausted. The chest now sat in the center of the barn, like a mysterious visitor from another era. Word spread quickly. In small villages, unusual news travels fast. By afternoon, several neighbors had already arrived. Harold Benson was among the first. He walked slowly around the chest, examining every detail. "Well," he said finally, "I've lived here 62 years. And I've never seen anything like this." Others soon offered opinions. Some believed it contained old farming equipment. Others suspected historical documents. One man jokingly suggested pirate treasure. The idea made everyone laugh. Oak Ridge Valley sat hundreds of miles from the ocean. Pirates seemed unlikely. Yet nobody truly knew what was inside, and that uncertainty fueled everyone's imagination. Eventually, someone suggested contacting the village locksmith. His name was Arthur Wells. Arthur had spent 40 years repairing locks throughout the region. If anyone could open the chest without damaging it, it would be him. By late afternoon, Arthur arrived carrying a collection of tools. He examined the lock carefully, then frowned. "This is unusual." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Bad news?" Arthur shook his head. "Not bad." He smiled slightly. "Interesting." The old locksmith spent nearly an hour studying the mechanism. The lock was unlike anything he normally encountered. Older, more complex, clearly designed by a skilled craftsman. Finally, after several attempts, a loud click echoed through the barn. Everyone froze. Arthur stepped back. "It's open." Silence filled the room. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. All eyes focused on the chest. For a moment, Samuel hesitated. What if it contained nothing valuable? What if years of anticipation ended in disappointment? Then again, what if it contained something extraordinary? Taking a deep breath, he slowly lifted the lid. The treasure. The crowd gasped. Inside the chest rested rows of gold coins. Dozens, perhaps hundreds. Sunlight reflected from their polished surfaces, making them sparkle like tiny suns. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The sight was simply too unexpected, too unbelievable. Clara stared in amazement. Elena covered her mouth. Harold blinked repeatedly as though doubting his own eyes. Gold. Real gold. Samuel could hardly believe it himself. But the coins were only the beginning. Beneath them lay silver jewelry, precious stones, ornate necklaces, decorative brooches, items clearly crafted by skilled artisans. Many appeared extremely old, possibly valuable beyond imagination. The chest contained more wealth than Samuel had ever seen, more wealth than he had ever imagined. And yet something else immediately caught his attention. A bundle of papers, carefully wrapped in oilcloth, protected from moisture, protected from time, protected for a reason. More than gold. While everyone admired the treasure, Samuel focused on the documents. Carefully, he removed them from the chest. The papers appeared aged but readable. Several contained handwritten notes. Others resembled maps. One document in particular stood out. It was folded separately from the rest, almost as though someone wanted it noticed. Samuel opened it. The handwriting was elegant, though faded with age. The message was surprisingly short. To the one who finds this chest. Everyone leaned closer. Samuel continued reading aloud. If fortune has guided you here, know this: the greatest treasure has not yet been discovered. The room became silent. Clara frowned. What does that mean? Nobody knew. The message continued. The path begins where the hills whisper to the wind. Then nothing. No signature, no explanation, no further instructions. only mystery. Questions without answers. That evening, the Carter family sat around the kitchen table discussing the discovery. The treasure remained safely locked inside the barn. Several neighbors had offered advice. Some suggested selling everything immediately. Others recommended contacting historians. A few believed the government should become involved. Everyone seemed to have an opinion. Yet Samuel remained uncertain. The gold alone could solve every financial problem they faced. The leaking roof, the old tractor, Clara's education, future security, everything. For the first time in years, money would no longer be a concern. Yet strangely, his thoughts kept returning to the message. The greatest treasure has not yet been discovered. Why include such a statement? Why hide it among valuable treasures? What secret remained? The questions refused to leave his mind. A visit from the historian. The following day brought another surprise. A regional historian named Professor Benjamin Hartley arrived in Oak Ridge Valley. News of the discovery had spread farther than expected. Professor Hartley specialized in local history and historical artifacts. After examining several coins, his excitement became obvious. Remarkable, Samuel smiled. That's good, right? The professor laughed. Very good. He carefully inspected additional items, then delivered unexpected news. The treasure appeared connected to a wealthy explorer who vanished nearly 200 years earlier. His name was Jonathan Blackwood. The man had become famous for exploring remote regions and collecting rare artifacts. According to local legends, Blackwood disappeared shortly before returning home from one of his final journeys. Neither he nor his fortune were ever found. Until now. At least part of it. The revelation fascinated everyone, including Samuel, but it also created new questions. If this treasure belonged to Blackwood, why was it buried beneath his farm? And what was the greater treasure mentioned in the letter? The map. Late that afternoon, while sorting through the documents, Clara discovered something hidden between two folded papers. A map! Samuel immediately turned toward her. Sure enough, she held a faded parchment map. Age had yellowed the paper. Several corners were damaged, yet the markings remained visible. The map depicted areas surrounding Oak Ridge Valley. Forests, rivers, hills, trails. Most importantly, several locations were marked with symbols. One symbol stood near a region known locally as Whispering Hills. The name instantly caught Samuel's attention. Because of the message, the path begins where the hills whisper to the wind. The connection felt obvious. Perhaps too obvious, yet it couldn't be ignored. Something waited in Whispering Hills, something Jonathan Blackwood wanted discovered. An unexpected visitor. That evening, just before sunset, another stranger appeared at the farmhouse. Unlike Professor Hartley, this visitor did not introduce himself. He wore expensive clothing. His manner seemed polite, yet something about him felt unsettling. The man asked numerous questions about the treasure. Too many questions. Questions about the gold, the documents, the map. His interest seemed unusually specific. When Samuel mentioned the hidden message, the stranger's eyes briefly narrowed. A reaction so subtle most people would have missed it. Samuel didn't. The conversation ended politely enough. But after the visitor departed, an uncomfortable feeling remained. Who was he? Why was he so interested? And how had he learned about the discovery so quickly? A sleepless night. Long after everyone else had gone to bed, Samuel remained awake. The map rested on the kitchen table. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting shadows across its faded surface. The treasure should have made him happy, and part of him was. But another part felt drawn towards something deeper, something unfinished. The gold represented an answer. The map represented a question, and questions have a way of demanding attention. Eventually, Samuel traced his finger toward the marked location near Whispering Hills. The route appeared challenging, remote, difficult, yet achievable, a journey, an adventure, perhaps even a risk. He should ignore it. He should focus on his family, his farm, his future. That would be the sensible choice. Instead, he found himself wondering what waited at the end of the map. Because deep down, he already knew something important. The treasure chest was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. And somewhere beyond the hills, hidden for generations, another secret awaited discovery. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Secret Map. Samuel follows Jonathan Blackwood's mysterious map into the Whispering Hills and discovers clues that suggest the greatest treasure isn't gold at all. Chapter 3: The Secret Map. The Farmer Who Found a Treasure. The morning after discovering the map, Samuel Carter woke before dawn. The farmhouse was quiet. Outside, a thin layer of mist covered the fields of Oak Ridge Valley. Normally, Samuel's first thoughts each morning involved crops, livestock, and farm work. Today was different. Today, his mind was consumed by a map, a mysterious map. A map hidden inside a treasure chest that had remained buried beneath his farm for generations. He sat at the kitchen table and carefully unfolded the parchment once more. The faded lines seemed clearer now, perhaps because he had studied them so many times during the night, or perhaps because he wanted answers, more than ever. The marked route led toward a region known as Whispering Hills, a place surrounded by stories and legends. Most villagers viewed those stories as harmless folklore. Children grew up hearing tales about hidden caves, forgotten travelers, and strange discoveries. Adults usually laughed about them. Yet now Samuel wasn't laughing, because for the first time he possessed evidence suggesting there might be truth hidden inside those legends. The decision. Elena found him studying the map during breakfast. She poured tea and sat beside him. "You didn't sleep much," Samuel smiled. "Was it that obvious?" "A little." Her eyes moved toward the parchment. "You're thinking about going?" Samuel hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Elena wasn't surprised. She had known her husband long enough to recognize that look in his eyes, the look he wore whenever curiosity became stronger than caution. "The farm needs you." "I know, and the treasure chest already solved most of our problems." "I know that too." She smiled softly. "Then why go?" Samuel looked out the window. The answer took several moments to form. "Because someone wanted this map found." Elena listened quietly, "and because I need to know why." The honesty of the answer surprised even him. It wasn't greed motivating him. The gold already provided more money than they had ever dreamed of possessing. No, this journey was about something else, something harder to explain, a mystery, a story left unfinished, a question waiting for an answer. Ha! Clara's excitement. When Clara learned about her father's decision, she nearly jumped from her chair. "You're actually going?" Samuel laughed. "Maybe. No, definitely." She pointed dramatically at the map. "That's exactly what happens in adventure stories." Elena rolled her eyes. "This isn't one of your books." "It sounds like one." Clara grinned. "A hidden treasure, a mysterious map, ancient secrets." She paused. "All we're missing is danger." Samuel exchanged a glance with Elena. Neither found that part particularly comforting. Preparing for the journey. By afternoon, Samuel began making preparations. The route through Whispering Hills wasn't especially dangerous, but it wasn't easy either. The terrain could be rough. Several sections passed through dense forests. Other portions crossed steep ridges and rocky paths. Careful planning was essential. Samuel packed basic supplies: food, water, blankets, a lantern, rope, tools, a notebook, and of course, the map. He also made an important decision. His loyal dog, Rusty, would accompany him. Rusty had lived on the farm nearly 10 years. The large golden brown dog possessed remarkable intelligence and endless loyalty. If Samuel traveled anywhere beyond the farm, Rusty usually followed. This journey would be no exception. The dog seemed thrilled by the idea. The Legend of Whispering Hills. Before leaving, Samuel decided to visit Professor Benjamin Hartley. The historian might know more about the location marked on the map. Professor Hartley welcomed him into a small office temporarily established inside the village library. Books and papers covered nearly every surface. The man appeared delighted to discuss local history. When Samuel mentioned Whispering Hills, the professor leaned back thoughtfully. "Interesting. You know something about it?" "A little." The professor opened an old book and flipped through several pages. "Whispering Hills has been part of local folklore for centuries." "What kind of folklore?" Professor Hartley smiled. "The usual kind." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Lost explorers, hidden caves, forgotten fortunes." He paused, "and strange voices carried by the wind." Samuel laughed softly. "Voices?" "The hills produce unusual echoes." The professor shrugged. "People once believed spirits lived there." Samuel wasn't interested in spirits, but he was interested in explorers, particularly one explorer, Jonathan Blackwood. "Did Blackwood ever travel there?" The professor nodded. "Frequently." That answer immediately captured Samuel's attention. A curious discovery. Professor Hartley retrieved another document from his collection. This one appeared far older, a journal entry copied from historical records. The handwriting belonged to Jonathan Blackwood himself. Samuel read carefully. The answers I seek lie beyond the northern ridge. If fortune favors me, future generations may benefit from what I have discovered. Samuel looked up. Future generations? The professor nodded. An unusual phrase. It is. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Samuel asked the obvious question. What did he discover? Professor Hartley smiled. If I knew that, your journey wouldn't be necessary. The journey begins. Early the next morning, Samuel set out. Elena and Clara stood outside the farmhouse to see him off. The rising sun painted the valley gold. Birds filled the air with song. The day felt strangely important, almost symbolic, as though life itself were turning a page. Clara hugged him tightly. Bring back another treasure. Samuel laughed. I'll see what I can do. Elena embraced him next, then looked directly into his eyes. Be careful. I will. Though both knew adventure rarely follows careful plans. With Rusty trotting beside him, Samuel began walking toward the distant hills. The farmhouse gradually disappeared behind him, then the fields, then the village itself. Ahead waited uncertainty, mystery, and perhaps answers. By midday, Samuel reached the forest surrounding Whispering Hills. The landscape felt very different from Oak Ridge Valley. Taller trees, denser vegetation, narrow trails winding through ancient woodland. Sunlight filtered through branches overhead, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow. The deeper he traveled, the quieter the world became. Only birdsong and rustling leaves interrupted the silence. Rusty remained alert, occasionally stopping to sniff the air or investigate unfamiliar sounds. Samuel consulted the map frequently. Thus far, the route matched perfectly. Whoever created the map had known this region extremely well. Attached signs of the past. Late in the afternoon, Samuel discovered something unexpected. Near a rocky outcrop, partially hidden beneath moss and vines, stood an old stone marker. The marker appeared man-made, weathered by time but still recognizable. Curious, Samuel cleared away some vegetation. Symbols covered the surface. Most were difficult to interpret. One, however, stood out immediately. It matched a symbol from the map. Exactly. His pulse quickened. This wasn't random. He was definitely following Jonathan Blackwood's trail. For the first time, the adventure felt completely real. Someone had intentionally left clues. Someone wanted the path to be followed. But why? The old traveler. As evening approached, Samuel reached a small clearing. There he encountered another traveler, an elderly man sitting beside a campfire. The stranger wore simple clothing and carried a walking staff. He appeared relaxed, almost as though he had been expecting company. Rusty approached cautiously. The old man smiled and offered the dog a piece of dried meat, instantly earning Rusty's approval. Good dog, Samuel nodded politely. Mind if I rest here for a few minutes? Not at all. The traveler gestured toward a nearby log. For a while they spoke about ordinary things, weather, travel, the countryside. Then the old man noticed the map. His expression changed slightly. You seek Blackwood's secret. Samuel froze. How do you know that? The traveler smiled. Because I've seen that map before. At an important lesson, Samuel immediately leaned forward. You've seen it? Years ago. The old man stared into the fire. Another man carried a copy. What happened to him? The traveler shrugged. He turned back. Why? Wrong reasons. Samuel frowned. The answer felt incomplete. The old man continued. Many people search for treasure. His voice became thoughtful. But very few understand what treasure truly is. The word sounded familiar, almost like advice, or perhaps a warning. Samuel remembered the message hidden inside the chest. The greatest treasure has not yet been discovered. Maybe the traveler understood something he didn't. Before Samuel could ask more questions, the old man stood. Night had fully arrived. Stars filled the sky above the trees. You should get some rest. Samuel nodded, then asked one final question. Have you ever found treasure? The traveler smiled. Yes. What was it? The old man's eyes twinkled. When you reach the end of your journey, you'll understand. Then he walked away into the darkness, leaving Samuel alone with questions. Again. A strange feeling. That night, Samuel camped beneath the stars. Rusty slept nearby. The forest remained quiet, yet Samuel couldn't stop thinking about Blackwood, about the map, about the traveler, and especially about the repeated references to a greater treasure. Everyone seemed to know something he didn't. Everyone spoke in riddles. The mystery deepened with every step. Yet strangely, that only increased his determination. Because now he felt certain of one thing. The treasure chest buried beneath his farm had never been the true destination. It had been an invitation leading somewhere far more important, somewhere hidden deep within Whispering Hills. And tomorrow, he intended to continue following the trail, unaware that someone else had also begun searching for Blackwood's secret, someone who cared far more about wealth than wisdom, and that person was already following his path. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Journey Through the Hills. Samuel ventures deeper into Whispering Hills, faces unexpected dangers, and discovers evidence that someone else is hunting for the treasure. Chapter 4. The Journey Through the Hills. The farmer who found a treasure. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees as Samuel Carter opened his eyes. For a few moments he forgot where he was. Then the events of the previous day returned. The treasure chest, the mysterious map, the stone markers, and the strange traveler who seemed to know far more than he revealed. Rusty stretched beside the dying campfire and wagged his tail. The dog appeared eager to continue. Samuel felt the same. Somewhere ahead, Jonathan Blackwood's secret waited, and with every passing hour, the mystery seemed to deepen. After a simple breakfast, Samuel packed his supplies and resumed the journey. The trail climbed steadily upward. The deeper he traveled into Whispering Hills, the more isolated the landscape became. Towering cliffs rose above narrow valleys. Ancient trees covered the hillsides. Streams carved winding paths through the wilderness. It was beautiful, wild, untouched, and strangely peaceful. Yet Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Signs of another traveler. Around midday, Samuel discovered fresh footprints near a stream. He stopped immediately. Rusty began sniffing the ground. The tracks were recent, very recent, perhaps only a few hours old. Samuel crouched beside them. The prints clearly belonged to another person, someone traveling in the same direction, someone following the same route. His thoughts immediately returned to the well-dressed stranger who had visited the farmhouse after the treasure was discovered. Could it be him? Samuel wasn't certain, but the timing felt suspicious. The map pointed toward something valuable, and valuable things often attract unwanted attention. For the first time since leaving home, Samuel felt uneasy. Past the hidden symbol, by afternoon, the path led toward a rocky ridge overlooking a deep valley. The map indicated that a clue should be somewhere nearby. Samuel searched carefully. At first he found nothing. Then Rusty began barking near a large stone formation. Samuel approached. The rock looked ordinary, but when he examined it closely, he noticed something unusual. A symbol had been carved into the surface, the same symbol he had seen on the earlier stone marker. And beneath it were words, faint, almost erased by time. Samuel brushed away dirt and moss. Slowly the message became readable. The path forward belongs to those who seek knowledge, not riches. Samuel read the sentence twice, then a third time. It sounded exactly like something Jonathan Blackwood would write. Another clue, another reminder. Again and again the message remained the same. This journey wasn't about gold, at least not entirely. Dangerous terrain. The trail soon became more difficult. The hills grew steeper. Several sections required careful climbing. Loose rocks shifted beneath Samuel's boots. One wrong step could result in a dangerous fall. The journey demanded patience, concentration, and endurance. At one particularly narrow ledge, Samuel paused to catch his breath. The valley stretched far below. The view was breathtaking, yet it also reminded him how isolated he had become. No villages, no roads, no signs of civilization, only wilderness and secrets. As he continued climbing, dark clouds began gathering overhead. A storm was approaching. The storm returns. By late afternoon, thunder echoed across the hills. Wind swept through the trees. The peaceful landscape transformed rapidly. Samuel recognized the warning signs immediately. Years of farming had taught him how quickly weather could change. He needed shelter, fast. The map showed a cave not far ahead. Perhaps it could provide protection. Rain began falling moments later. At first, only a few drops, then a downpour. The storm intensified rapidly. Lightning flashed across the sky. Rusty stayed close as Samuel hurried through the rain. The cave appeared just as darkness began approaching, hidden beneath a cliff face. partially concealed by thick vegetation. Without hesitation, Samuel entered the cave. The cave extended deeper than expected, far deeper. Its entrance was narrow, but the interior opened into a large chamber. Samuel lit a lantern. Warm light pushed back the darkness. The walls contained strange markings, old markings. Some appeared natural, others clearly looked carved by human hands. His pulse quickened. This couldn't be a coincidence. Jonathan Blackwood had definitely passed through here, perhaps many years ago, perhaps generations ago. Then Samuel noticed something remarkable. A small carving near the far wall, the symbol from the map. Again, only this time, there was more. An arrow pointing deeper into the cave. Evidence. Samuel followed the arrow cautiously. The tunnel narrowed, then widened once more. Eventually he reached another chamber. This one was smaller, and unlike the first chamber, it contained evidence of recent activity. A campfire, empty food containers, footprints. Someone had been here. Recently, very recently. Samuel examined the area carefully. The evidence confirmed his fears. Another person was following Blackwood's trail, and whoever it was couldn't be far ahead. The realization changed everything. The adventure was no longer simply a historical mystery. Now it felt like a race. A hidden journal page. Near the edge of the chamber, Samuel discovered something partially hidden beneath a loose stone. A folded piece of paper. Age had yellowed the edges, but it remained readable. The handwriting looked familiar. Jonathan Blackwood's. Samuel unfolded it carefully. The message read, "If you have reached this place, then you possess determination. That is good, you will need it." Samuel smiled. The explorer seemed to anticipate every step of the journey. The note continued, "The greatest discoveries are rarely what we expect them to be. Many seek wealth, few seek understanding." Again, the same theme. Understanding, knowledge, purpose. Blackwood wasn't simply hiding treasure, he was teaching something. Trying to guide whoever followed him. But toward what? The stranger revealed. The storm finally weakened near sunset. Samuel prepared to continue. Then Rusty suddenly growled. A low warning growl. The kind he made only when sensing danger. Samuel froze. Footsteps echoed from deeper inside the cave. Slow, deliberate. Someone was approaching. The lantern light revealed a figure emerging from the shadows. A man. Well-dressed despite the difficult terrain. Clean boots. Expensive coat. Sharp eyes. Samuel recognized him immediately. The stranger from the farmhouse. The man smiled, though there was little warmth in it. "Mr. Carter." Samuel remained cautious. "You've been following me?" The stranger shrugged. "I prefer the term observing." "Who are you?" The man's smile widened. "My name is Victor Langford." The name meant nothing to Samuel, but something about Victor felt wrong. Very wrong. Victor glanced toward the journal page in Samuel's hand. "Interesting discoveries?" Samuel didn't answer. Victor seemed amused. "Come now." His voice remained calm. "We both know Blackwood left something valuable." Samuel studied him carefully. "And if he did," Victor stepped closer, "then I'd very much like to find it." The atmosphere instantly became tense. Samuel understood exactly what kind of person Victor was. Someone motivated by profit. Someone who viewed the journey differently. To Victor, the mystery represented wealth. Nothing more, nothing less. And that made him dangerous. A warning. Victor eventually smiled again. "Don't worry." He adjusted his coat. "I'm not interested in conflict." Samuel wasn't convinced. "Good." Victor glanced deeper into the cave, then back at Samuel. "Still, I suggest you move quickly." "What do you mean?" The man's expression became unreadable. "Because you're not the only person searching anymore." With that, Victor turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Samuel standing motionless. The warning echoed in his mind. Not the only person searching. Were there others? How many? And how close were they? The final clue. After Victor left, Samuel searched the chamber one last time. Near the rear wall, hidden behind loose stones, he discovered another carving. This one contained coordinates matching a location marked on the map, a place called Eagle's Crest, the northernmost point in Whispering Hills, and according to the map, the final destination. Samuel stared at the location. His heart raced. He was getting closer, much closer. The answers waited at Eagle's Crest, perhaps the treasure, perhaps the truth, perhaps both. Either way, the journey was nearing its most important chapter, and somewhere beyond the hills, Jonathan Blackwood's greatest secret remained hidden, waiting for the person worthy enough to discover it. End of chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Hidden Cave. Samuel reaches Eagle's Crest and uncovers a secret chamber that reveals the true purpose behind Blackwood's treasure. Chapter 5. The Hidden Cave. The farmer who found a treasure. The next morning arrived cold and grey. Samuel Carter stood at the entrance of the cave, staring toward the distant peaks of Whispering Hills. Somewhere beyond those hills lay Eagle's Crest, the final destination marked on Jonathan Blackwood's map, the place where decades of mystery would finally be explained. At least, Samuel hoped so. Rusty stood beside him, alert as always. The loyal dog seemed to sense that something important awaited them. Samuel folded the map carefully and slipped it into his pack. Then he began walking. The air felt different that morning, heavier, filled with anticipation. Every clue, every message, every challenge had led him here. And now the journey's end was finally within reach. The climb to Eagle's Crest. The trail became steeper with every mile. Gone were the gentle slopes of Oak Ridge Valley. Gone were the peaceful forest paths. This landscape was rugged, wild, untamed. Massive cliffs towered overhead. Sharp rocks lined the narrow trail. Strong winds swept across the hills. At times, Samuel had to climb using both hands. The journey demanded everything he had. Yet he never considered turning back. Not now. Not when he had come so far. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Sweat covered his forehead. His legs ached. Still, he continued, because curiosity had become something stronger. Purpose. The view from above. By midday, Samuel reached Eagle's Crest. The sight stole his breath. The entire region stretched before him. Forests, rivers, valleys, distant villages. The world seemed endless. For several moments, Samuel simply stood there, admiring the view, understanding why Blackwood had chosen this place. It felt special, almost sacred, a location worthy of hiding an important secret. Rusty barked suddenly. The sound broke Samuel's concentration. The dog stood near a large rock formation, scratching at the ground. Samuel walked over. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Then he noticed something, a symbol, carved into the stone. The same symbol that had appeared throughout the journey. His pulse quickened. This was it, the final clue. The hidden entrance. Samuel examined the rock carefully. The carving sat near the center of a massive stone wall. Beneath it were several smaller markings. Unlike previous clues, these appeared functional, almost like instructions. He studied them for several minutes. Then an idea occurred. Following the pattern shown in the carvings, he pressed against several specific sections of stone. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he noticed a narrow groove, hidden beneath years of dirt and moss. Carefully, he cleared the debris away. The groove formed part of a larger mechanism. A very old mechanism. With growing excitement, Samuel applied pressure once more. This time, something moved. A deep grinding sound echoed through the hillside. Rusty jumped backward. Slowly, part of the stone wall shifted. Dust filled the air. Ancient hinges groaned. And before Samuel's astonished eyes, a hidden entrance appeared. A doorway concealed for generations. Into the darkness. Samuel lit his lantern. The hidden passage stretched downward into darkness. Cool air drifted from within. The tunnel looked ancient, untouched, waiting. For a moment, Samuel hesitated. The mystery had occupied his thoughts for days. Now the answers were only steps away. Taking a deep breath, he entered. The tunnel descended gradually. Its walls were carved from solid stone. Whoever created this place possessed remarkable skill. Several minutes later, the passage opened into a vast underground chamber. Samuel stopped, amazed. The chamber was enormous, larger than any room he had ever seen. Lantern light revealed carved pillars supporting the ceiling. Ancient shelves lined the walls. And everywhere he looked, there were books, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Not what he expected. Samuel blinked, then blinked again. Books? This wasn't what he expected. Where was the mountain of gold, the piles of jewels, the legendary fortune? Instead, the chamber resembled a library, an enormous underground library. At the center stood a large wooden desk. Upon it rested a leather-bound journal. The cover bore a familiar name, Jonathan Blackwood. Samuel's heart raced. After all this time, he had finally found the explorer's personal records. Carefully, he opened the journal. The first page contained a message, written specifically for whoever completed the journey. Blackwood's final words. The handwriting was elegant, steady, confident. Samuel began reading. If you have reached this chamber, then you have demonstrated qualities far more valuable than wealth. he continued. Curiosity, persistence, patience, courage. The words felt personal, almost as though Blackwood were speaking directly to him. Many people would have stopped after finding the gold. Samuel remembered the treasure chest buried beneath his farm. The explorer was right. Most people would have been satisfied. But you continued searching. That means you are ready to understand the truth. Samuel turned the page eagerly. The next words changed everything. The real treasure. The gold was never my greatest treasure. Samuel read the sentence twice, then a third time. Exactly as he suspected. The explorer continued. Gold can be spent. Jewels can be stolen. Fortunes can disappear. But knowledge can improve lives for generations. Samuel looked around the chamber. Suddenly, everything made sense. The books, the journals, the hidden library. This was Blackwood's true treasure. Knowledge, decades of discoveries, research, observations, innovations. The explorer had spent his life collecting information from around the world, and instead of hiding gold, he had hidden wisdom. A discovery beyond wealth. Samuel began exploring the shelves. The collection was astonishing. Agriculture, engineering, medicine, architecture, navigation, science, every subject imaginable. Like many books contained handwritten notes, practical solutions, observations gathered from distant lands, techniques unknown to most people. One section immediately caught Samuel's attention. Agriculture. Shelf after shelf focused on farming, crop management, irrigation systems, soil improvement, water conservation, disease prevention, advanced techniques centuries ahead of their time. Samuel's excitement grew with every page. The information could transform farming throughout Oak Ridge Valley, perhaps throughout the entire region. The value of such knowledge was impossible to measure. The hidden chamber. While exploring further, Samuel discovered another room connected to the library. Smaller, more private. Inside stood maps of surrounding regions, detailed surveys, plans, blueprints, and a final journal. This one appeared newer than the others. It contained Blackwood's reflections during his final years. Samuel read carefully. One passage stood out. I once believed treasure meant wealth. Then I traveled the world. I learned that knowledge creates wealth. Opportunity creates wealth. Education creates wealth. Gold merely changes hands. The words resonated deeply because Samuel understood them. For years he had struggled simply to survive. Yet the knowledge contained within this chamber could help countless families build better futures. That was worth far more than coins. Victor arrives. A sudden sound echoed through the chamber. Footsteps. Samuel immediately looked up. Rusty growled. The noise grew louder. Someone was approaching. Moments later, a familiar figure entered the hidden library. Victor Langford. The businessman stopped abruptly. His eyes widened. For several seconds, he stared around the chamber in disbelief. Then confusion replaced excitement. Where is it? Samuel already knew what he meant. The treasure? Victor nodded. The real treasure. Samuel gestured toward the shelves. It's here. Victor looked around impatiently. Books? Knowledge. Victor laughed, a short, disappointed laugh. You're telling me I crossed mountains for books? Samuel smiled. Apparently. The businessman looked furious. Everything about his reaction revealed his priorities. He had expected wealth. Instead, he found wisdom, and he couldn't understand why anyone would value one over the other. Understanding, Victor eventually left, disappointed, frustrated, angry. To him, the journey had become pointless, but Samuel remained, because he understood something Victor didn't. The library contained possibilities, solutions, opportunities, knowledge capable of helping people. And helping people mattered. More than gold, more than jewels, more than hidden fortunes. As sunset approached, Samuel sat at Blackwood's desk reading the explorer's final message. The last page contained only one sentence, a simple sentence, yet perhaps the most important of all. The greatest treasure is the ability to improve another person's life. Samuel smiled. At last he understood. The mystery was solved. The treasure had been found. But the most important decision still remained. What would he do with it? Because once he returned home, the knowledge would become his responsibility, and that choice would determine the future of Oak Ridge Valley itself. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. A choice between wealth and wisdom. Wealthy collectors offer Samuel a fortune for Blackwood's library, forcing him to choose between personal riches and helping an entire community. Chapter 6. A choice between wealth and wisdom. The Farmer Who Found a Treasure. For 3 days, Samuel Carter remained inside Jonathan Blackwood's hidden library. The more he read, the more amazed he became. Every shelf contained ideas that could change lives. Advanced farming methods, water conservation systems, soil restoration techniques, methods for increasing harvests during droughts, natural ways to protect crops from insects, solutions to problems farmers had struggled with for generations. Samuel filled notebook after notebook with observations. The knowledge was practical, useful, transformative, and unlike gold, it could be shared endlessly. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that Blackwood had been right. This truly was the greatest treasure. Not because it would make one person rich, because it could help entire communities prosper. Eventually, however, Samuel knew he had to return home. His family would be worried. The farm needed attention, and there was much to consider. Before leaving, he carefully copied important sections of the journals and maps. Then he closed Blackwood's final journal. As he did, he silently thanked the explorer, a man he had never met, a man who had changed his life centuries after his death. Returning to Oak Ridge Valley, the journey home felt shorter, perhaps because Samuel's mind remained occupied. Every step brought new questions. What should he do with the library? Who should know about it? How could he protect it? And most importantly, how could he use it to help others? When Oak Ridge Valley finally appeared in the distance, relief washed over him. The familiar fields, the winding roads, the old farmhouse, home. Clara spotted him first. She came running across the yard. "Dad!" Samuel laughed as she threw her arms around him. Elena followed moments later. Her expression showed both relief and curiosity. "You're back." "I am." Clara looked around excitedly. "Did you find it?" Samuel smiled. "Yes." "And?" The farmer glanced toward the horizon, then answered honestly, "I found something far more valuable than I expected." Sharing the story that evening, Samuel told them everything. The hidden entrance, the underground library, Blackwood's journals, the lessons hidden throughout the journey. Clara listened with wide eyes. It sounded even better than the adventure stories she loved. Elena listened quietly, thoughtfully. When Samuel finished, she smiled. "It sounds like Black wanted someone exactly like you to find it." Samuel laughed. "I'm not sure about that." "I am." "Why?" "Because many people would have focused on the gold." She reached for his hand. "But you kept searching." The words stayed with him, because perhaps she was right. News spreads within a week. Word of the hidden library spread beyond Oak Ridge Valley. Historians became interested. Researchers arrived. Journalists wrote articles. People traveled from neighboring towns simply to hear the story. Soon, attention reached far larger cities, and where attention goes, opportunity often follows, along with temptation. One afternoon, Samuel received an unexpected visitor, a wealthy collector named Charles Winthrop. The man arrived in an expensive carriage. His clothing alone probably cost more than Samuel earned in several months. After polite introductions, Charles got straight to the point. "I would like to purchase the library." Samuel blinked. "Purchase it?" "Yes." The collector smiled confidently. "I am prepared to offer a substantial amount." "How substantial?" Charles named a figure. Samuel nearly dropped his coffee cup. The amount was staggering. Enough money to transform his family's future forever. Enough to buy land, new equipment, a larger house, anything he wanted. And Charles wasn't finished. "If necessary, I can increase the offer." The temptation that night, Samuel sat alone on the farmhouse porch. The offer echoed in his thoughts. It would solve every financial problem, every concern, every uncertainty, one signature, one agreement, and his family would never struggle again. The temptation was real, very real. For years, he had worried about bills, repairs, harvests, unexpected expenses. Now all those worries could disappear, yet another thought kept returning. Blackwood's final message: the greatest treasure is the ability to improve another person's life. Samuel stared across the moonlit fields. Was the library truly his to sell, or had he been entrusted with something larger than himself? The question refused to leave him. Advice from Professor Hartley. The following day, Samuel visited Professor Benjamin Hartley. If anyone could offer perspective, it was the historian. After hearing about the collector's offer, Professor Hartley remained silent for several moments. Then he asked a simple question. "What do you want?" Samuel sighed. "That's the problem." "No," the professor smiled. I think you already know. Samuel frowned. What makes you say that? Because if you wanted the money, you would have accepted immediately. The farmer couldn't argue with that. The professor continued, You're struggling because this isn't really a financial decision. What is it? A question of purpose. The words hit harder than expected. Purpose. Perhaps that was exactly what this was about. The village meeting. A few days later, Samuel organized a meeting in Oak Ridge Valley. Farmers from throughout the region attended. The village hall filled quickly. Everyone wanted to hear about Blackwood's discoveries. Standing before the crowd, Samuel shared what he had learned. The improved irrigation systems, the farming techniques, the methods for protecting crops during difficult seasons. As he spoke, excitement spread through the room. People saw possibilities, hope, solutions. For many farmers, those solutions mattered more than gold, because they could improve lives for generations. When Samuel finished, applause filled the hall, and in that moment, his decision became clear. The choice! The next morning, Charles Winthrop returned, confident, expecting good news. Instead, Samuel smiled politely. I'm not selling. The collector blinked. Excuse me? The library isn't for sale. Charles stared at him. Surely he had misunderstood. You realize how much money I offered? I do. And you're refusing? Samuel nodded. The collector seemed genuinely shocked. Why? Samuel looked toward the hills where Blackwood's secret remained hidden, then answered, because it can help too many people. Charles shook his head, as though unable to comprehend the decision. Then he left, frustrated, confused, and perhaps a little disappointed. A new beginning. Months passed. Samuel worked closely with local farmers. Together they implemented techniques from Blackwood's journals. The results exceeded expectations. Crop yields increased, water usage decreased, soil quality improved. Families who had struggled for years began seeing better harvests. For the first time in a long time, optimism spread throughout Oak Ridge Valley. People smiled more, worried less, dreamed bigger, and that was only the beginning. Because Samuel soon realized the library's impact could extend far beyond farming. Education, business, community development. The possibilities seemed endless. One evening, while watching the sunset with Elena and Clara, Samuel reflected on how much had changed. Not because of gold, not because of wealth, because of knowledge, and because of a choice. A choice to share rather than sell. A choice to help rather than profit. A choice that would shape the future of the entire region. Yet the greatest chapter of the story still remained ahead, because Blackwood's legacy was about to transform Oak Ridge Valley in ways nobody could have imagined. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The greatest treasure of all. Years later, Samuel witnesses how one decision changes generations and discovers the true meaning of Blackwood's hidden treasure. Chapter 7. The greatest treasure of all. The farmer who found a treasure. 5 years passed. The seasons came and went. Spring followed winter. Summer followed spring. Autumn painted the hills gold. And life in Oak Ridge Valley slowly transformed. The changes didn't happen overnight. At first they were small. A farmer harvested slightly larger crops. A family earned enough money to repair their home. A struggling field became productive again. Simple improvements. Modest victories. But over time, those victories began adding up. And before long, the entire region started changing, all because of knowledge hidden inside an ancient library, and all because one farmer chose to share it. A valley reborn. One bright spring morning, Samuel Carter stood on a hill overlooking Oak Ridge Valley. The view amazed him, not because the landscape itself had changed. The rolling hills remained. The forest still stretched toward the horizon. The river continued winding through the countryside. No. The difference was the people. Prosperity had returned. Fields once abandoned now flourished. Farmhouses had been repaired. New barns stood where old structures once leaned dangerously. Families who had struggled for years finally enjoyed stability. Children attended better schools. Businesses opened. Communities grew stronger. The valley felt alive. Hope had returned. And hope is one of the most powerful forces in the world. The Learning Center, inspired by Blackwood's legacy, Samuel helped establish something new, the Blackwood Learning Center. Located near the center of Oak Ridge Valley, the building served as a place where farmers, students, and families could learn. The library's knowledge became available to everyone, not just scholars, Not just wealthy people, everyone. Books filled the shelves. Classes took place every week. Experts visited regularly. People traveled from neighboring regions to study there. What began as a hidden library in the hills had become a source of opportunity for thousands. Jonathan Blackwood would have been proud, very proud. Clara's dream comes true. By now, Clara was 17 years old. The curious girl who once loved adventure stories had grown into a remarkable young woman. She still loved books, still loved learning. Still asked more questions than anyone else in the valley. But now she had a dream. She wanted to become a teacher. Not because teaching promised wealth, because she understood the value of knowledge. The same lesson her father had learned, the same lesson Blackwood had spent his life trying to share. One evening, Clara sat beside Samuel on the farmhouse porch. "Do you ever regret it?" Samuel looked surprised. "Regret what?" "Not selling the library." The farmer smiled. The question had crossed his mind before, particularly during difficult moments. But now the answer came easily. No. Not even a little. Samuel looked toward the valley. Children played near the school. Farmers worked productive fields. Families gathered in the town square. Then he shook his head. Not even a little. An unexpected visitor. One summer afternoon, a familiar carriage arrived at the farmhouse. Samuel immediately recognized it. Charles Winthrop, the wealthy collector. 5 years earlier, the man had offered a fortune for Blackwood's library. Now he stepped from the carriage looking older, wiser perhaps. Samuel welcomed him warmly. The two men sat together on the porch. For several minutes they simply talked, about life, about the valley, about the years that had passed. Finally, Charles looked across the countryside. "I owe you an apology." Samuel blinked. "For what?" The collector smiled slightly. "For thinking you were making a mistake." Samuel remained silent. Charles continued. "I couldn't understand your decision." He gestured toward the valley. "Now I can." The wealthy man looked genuinely impressed. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence of progress, prosperity, opportunity, community. The library had accomplished far more than anyone expected, including him. The true measure of wealth. Years continued passing. Samuel's reputation spread far beyond Oak Ridge Valley. People often referred to him as the farmer who found a treasure. Technically, that was true, but Samuel always corrected them. "The treasure found me." People usually laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't, because the greatest discovery wasn't the chest, or the gold, or even the hidden library. The greatest discovery was understanding what truly mattered. And that understanding changed everything. A new generation. 20 years after uncovering the treasure chest, Samuel stood before a group of students at the Blackwood Learning Center. Many of them had heard the story countless times, yet they never seemed to tire of it. One young boy raised his hand. "Mr. Carter? Yes? Were you scared when you found the treasure?" The room laughed. Samuel smiled, a little. Another student spoke up. "Did you know the library would change everything?" Samuel shook his head. "Not at all." Then a young girl asked the question everyone eventually asked. The treasure chest was full of gold. Yes. Then why wasn't that the greatest treasure? The room became quiet. Everyone waited for the answer. Samuel looked around carefully, at the students, at the books, at the future generation sitting before him. Then he answered, "The greatest treasure." "When I found the chest, I thought my problems were over." The students listened carefully. "I believed wealth would change my life." He smiled. "And it could have." Then his expression softened. "But Blackwood taught me something important." The room remained silent. The most valuable things cannot be locked inside a chest. He pointed toward the library shelves. Knowledge, then toward the students. Opportunity, then toward the valley outside, and people. The students nodded thoughtfully. Samuel continued, "Gold helps one person, but knowledge can help thousands." The lesson felt simple, yet powerful. Exactly the kind of lesson Jonathan Blackwood wanted future generations to learn. The final visit, one autumn evening. Many years later, Samuel returned to Eagle's Crest. The journey took longer now. Age had slowed him. His hair had turned grey. His face carried the marks of time, yet his spirit remained strong. Rusty was gone. Alina had passed away peacefully several years earlier. Clara now ran the learning center. Life had changed, as life always does. Still, Samuel felt drawn back to the place where everything began. The hidden library remained carefully preserved, protected, respected, used, exactly as Blackwood intended. Samuel entered the chamber one final time. The shelves remained full, the journals remained safe, the knowledge continued serving others, and for that, he felt grateful. Very grateful. A legacy that lives on. Before leaving, Samuel opened Jonathan Blackwood's journal once more. The familiar final sentence stared back at him. The greatest treasure is the ability to improve another person's life. Samuel smiled, because now he understood those words better than ever. The explorer had been right, completely right. Gold eventually disappears, buildings eventually age, fortunes rise and fall, but kindness, knowledge, opportunity, the positive impact we leave behind, those things endure, sometimes for generations. At The Farmer Who Found a Treasure. When people later told Samuel's story, they often focused on the mystery, the buried chest, the gold coins, the secret map, the hidden cave, the adventure. And certainly, those parts were exciting. But they weren't the most important parts. Not really. The most important moment happened when Samuel faced a choice between keeping something valuable for himself or sharing it with others. That decision changed everything. Because true treasure is not what we possess, it is what we contribute. And through that contribution, ordinary people create extraordinary legacies. Moral of the story. True treasure is not measured by money, gold, or possessions. The greatest treasure is knowledge, kindness, and the opportunities we create for others. A fortune may change one life, but wisdom shared with others can change generations. And that is the treasure that never fades. The end. The greatest treasure is not what you find, it is what you choose to do with it.